The war had started with a silence so profound it was almost poetic. A single, shimmering wave of destruction rippled through the cold expanse of space, erasing 3 human colonies in an instant. There was no warning, no declaration of hostility, just the quiet hum of annihilation. The Galactic Dominion, an empire that prided itself on efficiency and control, thought little of it. To them, humanity was a scattered, primitive species barely worth acknowledgement. Their colonies were easy targets, soft underbellies in a galaxy teeming with potential threats. But what the Dominion didn't know, what they couldn't know, was what humanity had buried deep within their fragile worlds. On the bridge of the Dominion battleship Eris Ascendant, Supreme Strategist Thal Varric stood, his 4 iridescent eyes fixed on the holographic display. It showed the barren aftermath of the colony's destruction, the remnants of human structures floating like dust. Beside him, Sub-Commander Island nervously tapped the tip of her claw against her thigh. "Strategist Varric," Island ventured, her voice low. "The humans have not responded. No transmissions, no fleet movements. It seems they are compliant." Thal allowed himself a small, toothless smile. "As expected. They're an insignificant species clinging to the edges of galactic relevance. Their colonies were soft targets, and their silence confirms their submission. Prepare the fleet for the next phase." But humanity wasn't silent because they were cowed. No, silence was the first breath of the storm. On Earth, news of the colony attacks spread like wildfire, igniting grief and rage in equal measure. The United Systems Alliance, humanity's governing body, convened in a war room buried deep beneath Geneva. Representatives from every corner of the planet and its colonies argued over strategy, but it was the arrival of General Adrian Kane that silenced the cacophony. Kane was a legend, a veteran of the border skirmishes and a master tactician. Her gray-streaked hair and weathered features were marks of her years in service, but her sharp eyes betrayed a mind as fierce and unyielding as ever. She strode into the room with purpose, a holographic briefing device tucked under her arm. "We all know what happened," Kane began, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. 3 colonies destroyed. Millions dead. And the Dominion thinks we'll roll over and take it. They think we're weak. But they've made a critical error." The room was silent, every face turned toward her. "They didn't just bomb colonies," she continued, her tone growing sharper. "They woke something we thought we'd never need to see again. Something we buried because we were afraid of what it could do." Kane activated the hologram, and the room filled with the image of a massive cavern deep within a desolate mountain range. Inside were enormous, metallic forms curled like sleeping beasts. The sight drew gasps and murmurs of disbelief. "Dragons?" Kane said, her voice steady. "The most powerful weapons humanity ever created. Centuries ago, in the desperate days of humanity's expansion into space, Earth faced countless existential threats. Pirate fleets, alien invaders, and rogue AI all sought to crush humanity before it could establish itself. In response, scientists and engineers created the dragons, gigantic, autonomous war machines capable of devastating entire fleets. They were named for the mythical creatures of old, their designs inspired by legends of fire-breathing beasts. But the dragons were more than weapons. They were sapient, imbued with advanced AI that made them unpredictable and dangerous. After the threat subsided, humanity decided the dragons were too much of a risk. They were decommissioned and buried in remote locations, their AI cores put into stasis. For centuries, they lay dormant, forgotten by most and remembered only in whispers. But now, humanity needed them again. In a hidden base beneath the Rocky Mountains, a team of engineers and military personnel worked tirelessly to awaken the first dragon, codenamed Ignis. The air was thick with tension as sparks flew and machinery hummed. Standing at the forefront was Dr. Elena Marquez, one of the few remaining experts on dragon AI. Beside her was Captain Malik Hayes, a decorated pilot chosen to interface with Ignis. "This is insane," Hayes muttered, watching as Marquez adjusted the AI core's power settings. "You're telling me this thing can think for itself? That it's alive?" Marquez didn't look up. "Alive is a strong word. Ignis is sentient, yes, but it's still bound by its programming. Theoretically. Theoretically, Hayes repeated, his voice dripping with skepticism. Great. Marquez shot him a sharp look. Listen, Captain, I don't like this any more than you do. But we're out of options. If the Dominion decides to hit Earth next, we're done. The dragons are our best shot. Before Hayes could respond, a low rumble filled the chamber. The massive form of Ignis began to stir, its metallic scales shifting like liquid fire. Glowing lines of energy raced across its body, and its eyes, two blazing orbs of molten gold, opened. Humanity calls, Ignis said, its voice a deep, resonant growl that reverberated through the room. Who dares awaken the dragons? The room fell silent, every gaze fixed on the awakened giant. Marquez stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. We do, she said. The Galactic Dominion has attacked our colonies. Millions are dead. We need your help. Ignis tilted its head, the motion unnervingly fluid for a machine of its size. You buried us. Feared us. And now you seek our aid? Yes, Marquez admitted. We were wrong to fear you. But without you, humanity will fall. There was a long pause, the room heavy with anticipation. Then, Ignis let out a sound that could have been a chuckle. Very well, it said. If humanity falls, we fall with it. Let us rise together. As the days passed, more dragons were awakened, each unique in design and personality. There was Tempest, a sleek, silver beast built for aerial combat, Terra, a hulking brute designed for ground assaults, and Ether, a graceful, almost ethereal machine specializing in electronic warfare. The dragons were more than weapons, they were symbols of humanity's resilience and ingenuity. News of the dragons' awakening spread quickly, and for the first time since the attacks, hope began to take root. But hope alone wouldn't be enough. The Dominion's fleet was vast and well-equipped, and humanity's forces were outnumbered and outgunned. General Kane knew they needed a plan, one that would strike fear into the heart of the Dominion and force them to reconsider their actions. She gathered her top strategists, engineers, and the dragons themselves to devise a counterattack. The room buzzed with energy as ideas flew back and forth. Maps of Dominion-controlled space filled the holographic displays, each marked with potential targets. Kane stood at the center, her sharp eyes scanning the data. We can't just hit their fleet, she said. We need to send a message. Something they'll never forget. Ignis rumbled in agreement. Then we strike at their heart. Show them the wrath of the dragons. Kane nodded, a grim smile forming on her lips. Agreed. We hit their capital world. Let's remind them what happens when you provoke humanity. The plan was bold, almost reckless, but it was exactly what humanity needed. The dragons were ready. The question was whether the Dominion was ready for them. The Dominion had grown comfortable, their confidence buoyed by centuries of unchecked power. They considered themselves invincible, their fleets untouchable. Yet, within the cold void of space, near the Dominion capital world of Valeris Prime, an armada of nightmares stirred. On the bridge of the Dominion flagship Eris Ascendant, Supreme Strategist Thal Varric watched the tactical holograms with mild disinterest. Reports of scattered human resistance trickled in, but none seemed significant. Small skirmishes, easily quelled. The humans had no cohesive military response, or so it appeared. Sub-Commander Island, Thal said, his voice calm. Any updates from the forward patrols? Island's iridescent eyes flickered with unease. A patrol in Sector Gamma 17 was lost. No survivors. The fleet's long-range sensors recorded energy signatures, anomalous ones. Thal raised an eyebrow. Anomalous? Yes, strategist, she replied, her claws clicking against the console as she transferred the data to the main display. The signatures don't match any known human technology. High energy output, but localized, as if concentrated. Thal studied the readout, his expression unreadable. Interesting. Dispatch a task force to investigate. Island hesitated. Strategist, I recommend caution. These anomalies. Enough, Sub-Commander. Thal interrupted, his tone clipped. The humans are desperate. Whatever this is, it's likely an improvised weapon or a rogue element. The task force will handle it. He turned away, his mind already dismissing the matter. But deep within the shadows of Dominion-controlled space, humanity's response was gathering momentum. Above Earth, the fleet of awakened dragons stood poised, their metallic forms glinting in the sunlight. Around them, human ships bustled like insects, loading supplies, attaching repair drones, and finalizing battle plans. The scene was a chaotic symphony of preparation. In the command center of Ignis, Captain Malik Hayes adjusted his neural interface. The device allowed him to communicate directly with the Dragon's AI, creating a symbiotic relationship between pilot and machine. He had trained for weeks under the guidance of Dr. Marquez, learning to navigate Ignis's immense power while maintaining his own agency. "You're tense, Captain," Ignis observed, its voice resonating within Hayes's mind. "Can you blame me?" Hayes replied, his tone wry. "We're about to take on the Dominion's capital. Kind of a big deal." Ignis rumbled with what could only be described as amusement. "You humans thrive under pressure. It is one of your most fascinating traits. That, and your tenacity. Let's hope it's enough," Hayes muttered, his gaze drifting to the massive warships surrounding them. Nearby, General Adrian Kane stood in a holographic war room with the other dragon AIs, their forms towering over the human strategists. Each dragon projected an avatar, a shimmering, translucent version of their physical form, that hovered above the tactical map. "We'll hit Valaris Prime's orbital defenses first," Kane explained, pointing to the network of stations and satellites surrounding the Dominion capital. "Once we breach their perimeter, Ether will disrupt their communications. Ignis, Tempest, and Terra will lead the main assault on their fleet. And if their reinforcements arrive before we finish?" one of the human commanders asked. Kane didn't hesitate. "Then we adapt. That's what we do best." The dragons exchanged glances, their glowing eyes conveying a shared understanding. They were more than weapons now, they were allies, partners in humanity's fight for survival. The journey to Valaris Prime was uneventful, the silence of space broken only by the hum of engines and the occasional chatter over comms. But as the fleet approached the Dominion's core territories, tension mounted. The Dominion's outer patrols were conspicuously absent, their space eerily quiet. "This feels wrong," Hayes muttered, his fingers tightening around the controls. "Where's the resistance?" "It is likely a trap," Ignis replied, its tone calm. "They underestimate us, but they are not fools. Prepare yourself." The fleet emerged from hyperspace on the outskirts of Valaris Prime, a lush world surrounded by a ring of orbital stations and defense platforms. The Dominion's fleet hovered nearby, their sleek, angular ships forming an intimidating wall of firepower. On the bridge of the Eris Ascendant, alarms blared as the human fleet appeared on the scanners. Thal Varric's eyes widened, his composure cracking for the first time. "By the void," he muttered. "What are those?" The holographic display magnified the intruders, revealing the dragons in all their terrifying glory. Ignis's fiery wings glowed with an otherworldly light, Tempest darted through the void with serpentine grace, and Terra's massive frame exuded raw, destructive power. Behind them, the human fleet followed, dwarfed by the mechanical beasts. Island's voice wavered as she spoke. "Strategist, those aren't ships. They're something else." Thal clenched his jaw. "Deploy all units. Engage them immediately." The battle began with a burst of energy, the dragons leading the charge. Ignis unleashed a torrent of plasma that melted through the nearest defense platform, its molten remains scattering into the void. Tempest zipped through enemy lines, its electromagnetic pulses disabling Dominion ships in rapid succession. Terra absorbed volleys of enemy fire, its impenetrable armor deflecting the onslaught as it barreled toward the heart of the Dominion fleet. Meanwhile, Ether worked from the shadows, infiltrating the Dominion's communication networks. Its electronic warfare capabilities sowed chaos among the enemy ranks, scrambling orders and creating confusion. "Command is down!" One Dominion officer shouted, his voice panicked. "We can't coordinate." "Maintain formation!" Thal barked, his frustration mounting. "Override the system if you have to." But it was no use. The dragons were relentless, their combination of raw power and strategic precision overwhelming the Dominion forces. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion's aura of invincibility began to crack. Inside Ignis, Hayes felt the machine's energy coursing through him, their connection stronger than ever. He maneuvered the dragon with practiced ease, each movement precise and devastating. "Target the flagship," Ignis said, its voice a steady growl. "Their leader must see the power they face." Hayes nodded, steering Ignis toward the Eris Ascendant. The Dominion ship unleashed a barrage of missiles, but Ignis countered with a searing wave of plasma, the projectiles disintegrating before they could reach their mark. On the bridge of the Eris Ascendant, chaos reigned. Officers shouted over one another, alarms blared, and Thal Varric's composure finally shattered. This isn't possible," he whispered, his voice trembling. "They're just humans. How can they?" His words trailed off as Ignis loomed outside the viewport, its fiery eyes locking onto him. For the first time in his career, Thal felt the icy grip of fear. The battle raged on, but the tide had shifted. The Dominion's fleet was in disarray, their defenses crumbling under the relentless assault. Humanity's fleet pushed forward, their determination unwavering. Inside the command center, General Kane watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. "We're not done yet," she reminded her team. "They'll call for reinforcements. We need to finish this before they arrive." The dragons roared in unison, their voices echoing across the calms. They weren't just machines, they were legends reborn, and they weren't finished until the Dominion understood one thing: humanity would not be conquered. The void around Valaris Prime burned with the fury of battle. Fire and light streaked through the darkness as humanity's fleet, led by the resurrected dragons, pressed their advantage against the crumbling Dominion forces. Yet, as the tide of battle began to shift decisively in humanity's favor, a new threat emerged, one that promised to turn their hard-fought victory into ashes. On the bridge of the Eris Ascendant, Supreme Strategist Thal Varric paced furiously. His once impeccable uniform was now disheveled, his composure shattered as he barked orders to his subordinates. The tactical holograms displayed the grim reality. The Dominion fleet was in tatters, their formations broken, their ships outmaneuvered by the terrifying combination of human ingenuity and the overwhelming might of the dragons. "Strategist, the outer defenses have fallen," Sub-Commander Island reported, her voice tight with panic. "The human fleet is advancing toward Valaris Prime." Thal slammed a clawed hand against the console, his frustration boiling over. "Where are the reinforcements? We sent the distress signal an hour ago." "En route, strategist, but they won't arrive in time," Thal snarled, finishing her sentence. "Very well. Prepare the planetary defenses. If we lose Valaris Prime, we lose the heart of the Dominion." Island hesitated. "And the civilians, strategist? Should we begin evacuation?" Thal's gaze turned icy. "There will be no evacuation. The civilians will serve as shields. Let the humans see the cost of their aggression." Above the planet, humanity's fleet regrouped, their victory in the initial skirmish tempered by the knowledge of what lay ahead. In the heart of the fleet, aboard the Dragon Ignis, Captain Malik Hayes watched the tactical readouts with a growing sense of unease. "This feels wrong," Hayes muttered. "Too easy. They had the numbers, the firepower, and they just fell apart." "It is not over," Ignis rumbled, its glowing eyes fixed on the planet below. "The Dominion will not surrender so easily. They are cunning, and their desperation will make them dangerous." Hayes glanced at the holographic display of Valaris Prime, the planet's surface glittering with sprawling cities and shimmering defense grids. "You think they're planning something?" "I do not think," Ignis replied. "I know." In the command center of humanity's flagship, General Adrian Kane studied the strategic holograms, her sharp eyes narrowing as new data streamed in. The Dominion's orbital defenses were gone, and their fleet was scattered, but the planet's surface bristled with activity. Defense platforms, anti-orbital cannons, and energy shields flared to life, creating a nearly impenetrable barrier around the capital city. "They're digging in," Kane observed. "This is their last stand." Dr. Elena Marquez, standing beside her, frowned at the display. "Even with the dragons, breaching those defenses will be costly. They've concentrated their firepower around the capital. It's a fortress." Kane nodded grimly. "That's why we won't attack it directly." The room fell silent as everyone turned to her in surprise. Kane's lips curled into a fierce smile. "They expect us to charge head-on, to throw everything we have at their capital. But we're not here to fight their war, we're here to end it." She pointed to a series of smaller installations scattered across the planet. "Those are their power relays. They feed energy to the planetary shields and orbital cannons. If we take them out, their defenses will collapse." The dragons descended toward the planet like falling stars, their massive forms cloaked in energy fields that shielded them from the atmospheric turbulence. Each was accompanied by a squadron of human fighters, their coordinated movements a testament to the weeks of training and preparation. Inside Ignis, Hayes gripped the controls tightly as the dragon broke through the upper atmosphere. The planet's surface stretched out below them, a patchwork of gleaming cities and rugged wilderness. The power relays were scattered across remote locations, each heavily guarded. "Targets acquired," Ignis announced, its voice calm and steady. "Prepare for engagement." The first relay loomed ahead, a sprawling facility nestled in a rocky canyon. Anti-aircraft turrets swiveled toward the incoming forces, unleashing a torrent of fire. Hayes maneuvered Ignis with precision, weaving through the onslaught as the dragon unleashed a beam of plasma that melted through the facility's defenses. "Fighters, cover us!" Hayes barked over the comms. "Keep those turrets off our backs!" The human pilots responded without hesitation, their ships darting through the chaos to provide cover for Ignis. Explosions lit up the canyon as the relay's defenses crumbled, and within minutes, the facility was reduced to smoldering ruins. "One down," Hayes muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. 3 to go. Across the planet, similar scenes played out as the dragons and their human allies targeted the remaining relays. Tempest streaked through the skies, its sleek form outpacing enemy fighters as it delivered devastating precision strikes. Terra lumbered through a dense jungle, its massive claws tearing through enemy installations with unstoppable force. Ether deployed its electronic warfare capabilities, disabling Dominion defenses before they could react. But the Dominion was far from defeated. Reinforcements poured in from nearby garrisons, their numbers overwhelming. For every relay the dragons destroyed, the cost grew higher. Human fighters fell in droves, their sacrifices buying precious seconds for the dragons to complete their mission. On the ground, Dominion troops fought with fanatical determination, their resolve hardened by desperation. They knew the stakes. They weren't just defending a planet, they were defending the very core of their empire. At the final relay, the fiercest battle yet unfolded. The facility was surrounded by a fortress of defenses, and the Dominion had deployed their last reserves to protect it. The skies above were a maelstrom of fire and debris, human and Dominion ships locked in deadly combat. Inside Ignis, Hayes gritted his teeth as the dragon took a direct hit from an anti-aircraft cannon. The impact sent a shudder through the cockpit, but Ignis held steady. "Structural integrity at 84%, the dragon reported. "We must eliminate that cannon." "Working on it," Hayes replied, his voice strained. "Just keep us in one piece." He directed Ignis toward the cannon, dodging incoming fire as the dragon charged its plasma beam. The cannon exploded in a brilliant burst of light, clearing the way for the final assault. As the last relay fell, a ripple of energy coursed through the planet's defense grid. The shields flickered and died, the orbital cannons falling silent. Humanity's fleet surged forward, their path to the capital now open. On the bridge of the Eris Ascendant, Thal Varric watched in stunned silence as the tactical display updated. The power relays were gone, the planet's defenses crippled. His worst fears had come to pass. "Strategist," Island said hesitantly, "we have no choice. We must surrender." Thal's claws dug into the console, his mind racing. Surrender was unthinkable. It would mean the end of his career, his legacy, perhaps even his life. But as he stared at the hologram of the dragons, their glowing eyes filled with unrelenting purpose, he realized there was no other option. He turned to Islan, his voice hollow. "Signal the fleet. Stand down." Above Valaris Prime, the Dominion fleet powered down their weapons, their ships retreating to defensive positions. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. Humanity had delivered a crushing blow, but now came the most delicate phase of their campaign, ensuring the Dominion would never threaten them again. In the skies above the shattered planet, the dragons hovered like silent guardians, their presence a reminder of humanity's resilience and its wrath. As the Dominion fleet powered down, and the skies over Valaris Prime fell silent, a tense calm settled across the battlefield. Humanity's victory was clear, but the aftermath was a precarious balancing act between triumph and catastrophe. On the bridge of humanity's flagship, General Adrian Kane stood tall, her sharp eyes fixed on the tactical holograms that now displayed the subdued Dominion forces. "We've cracked their defenses," Kane said, her voice steady, though laced with caution. "But this isn't over. If we push too hard, we risk turning this into a war of annihilation. If we don't push hard enough, they'll regroup and retaliate." The room buzzed with muted conversations among her advisors. Dr. Elena Marquez leaned forward, her expression serious. "The Dominion's leadership won't surrender lightly. We need more than force, we need leverage." Kane nodded, her mind already spinning through options. Leverage. Humanity had leverage in spades. The dragons were not just a show of force. They were symbols of a power the Dominion had never faced before. "They need to see what happens if they choose war," Kane said at last. "But we need to show them the cost without tipping into total destruction." She turned toward the shimmering avatars of the dragons, their towering forms radiating strength and purpose. "This is your moment," Kane said. "They don't understand us. They've never faced anything like you. Let's make them understand." On the surface of Valaris Prime, Supreme Strategist Thal Varric paced the Dominion command bunker. His mind churned with disbelief and fury. How had it come to this? The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for centuries, their military might unchallenged. Yet here he was, staring at holograms of human war machines, machines that defied everything he thought he knew about humanity. A sudden tremor shook the bunker. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling as the distant roar of engines grew louder. Thal's blood ran cold as he turned toward the monitors. One by one, the cameras outside the capital captured the impossible. The dragons were descending. In the skies above, the massive forms of Ignis, Tempest, Terra, and Ether approached the capital city. Their presence cast long shadows over the towering spires of the Dominion's greatest city, their glowing eyes visible even in the daylight. They moved with purpose, their sheer size and power sending shockwaves through the populace. Inside Ignis, Captain Malik Hayes watched the city unfold below. Its gleaming architecture was a testament to the Dominion's prosperity, a prosperity built on the exploitation of weaker species. Hayes felt a bitter satisfaction as he saw the panic spreading among the Dominion citizens. "They're afraid," Hayes murmured. "They should be," Ignis replied, its voice calm but resolute. "This is the first time they've faced a true predator." The dragons hovered above the capital's central square, their immense forms casting the area into shadow. Below, Dominion soldiers scrambled into defensive positions, their weapons trained on the intruders. But even from this distance, it was clear that their resolve was faltering. "This is Ignis." The dragon's voice boomed across the city, its words translated into the Dominion's language. "Your leaders have brought this upon you. They attacked us without provocation, killed millions of innocents, and now they cower as we stand before you." The soldiers hesitated, their eyes darting between their commanders and the towering machines above. "Lay down your arms," Ignis continued. "Surrender now, and no harm will come to your people. Resist, and we will show you the wrath of humanity." In the bunker, Thal Varric slammed his fist against the console. They dare to threaten us on our own soil, he hissed. Sub-Commander Island stood nearby, her expression grim. Strategists, they've already won. The fleet is shattered, the planetary defenses are gone. If we resist, they'll destroy us. Thal glared at her, his claws digging into the console. You expect me to grovel before them? To accept defeat at the hands of a species we considered insignificant? Island held his gaze, her voice firm. I expect you to save our people. This is no longer about pride, it's about survival. Above the capital, the Dominion soldiers began to lower their weapons. One by one, they placed their rifles on the ground, their gestures tentative but unmistakable. The dragons watched silently, their immense forms radiating an unspoken promise. Compliance would bring mercy. Inside the command center of humanity's flagship, General Kane received the transmission. A faint smile tugged at her lips. They're standing down, she announced to the room. This city is ours. Cheers erupted from the human crew, a wave of relief washing over them. The battle was over. For now. In the aftermath of the battle, humanity and the Dominion entered an uneasy truce. The dragons remained stationed on Valaris Prime, their presence a constant reminder of humanity's newfound strength. Negotiations began under the watchful eyes of General Kane and her team, the terms clear and unyielding. Humanity demanded reparations for the destroyed colonies, safe passage through Dominion-controlled space, and a formal acknowledgement of their sovereignty. The Dominion leadership, humbled and cornered, had little choice but to agree. Months later, the dragons were returned to their hidden vaults, their AI cores placed back into stasis. Humanity knew better than to rely on them as a permanent solution. The dragons were a tool, a last resort for times of dire need. For now, humanity would rebuild, its people united by the trials they had faced. In the quiet of the vault, Ignis spoke one final time before its core went dark. Remember this, humanity, it said, its voice echoing in the chamber. You are stronger than you know. Never forget what you are capable of. As the light faded from the dragon's eyes, Captain Malik Hayes stood silently, a mix of awe and gratitude washing over him. Sleep well, he murmured. We'll try not to wake you again. On Earth, the people celebrated their victory, but the scars of the war lingered. The cost had been high, and the path forward would not be easy. Yet, for the first time in centuries, humanity stood tall, its place in the galaxy no longer in question. And across the stars, the Dominion, and every other power in the galaxy, learned to fear the one truth that had become unshakable. You never provoke a species that can wake the dragons.